Welcome. My name is Patty Mayer. I'm with the Minnesota Paralegal Association. I'm the Director of Positions and Issues and NFPA Primary. And we are excited to provide you some information about the Legal Paraprofessional program specifically in Minnesota, but there are a lot of other states. So if you are not from Minnesota, please put that in the chat. We'd love to hear who else is on listening in with us today, but I'm happy to have our committee members join me. So Anna Collar is on with from Justice North, and Rachel Mitchell. She's with the law firm of Patton, Halverson, and Berg. And then Jeff Nielema is on. He's with Nielema Mediation. And I don't know if Emily's on because I can't see my other screen. So Emily's planning to join us too from Justice North. And so we're going to start with some introductory comments about the LP program here in Minnesota. And then we're going to have a panel discussion from people that are actually LPs. So I'm not an LP, but I am very interested in what this program has to offer for Minnesota. MPA is very supportive of this program, as it has been since the initial pilot project in 2001 or 2021, sorry. And then we will, be happy to open up for questions. And again, anybody joining us outside of Minnesota, please put that in the chat. I'd love to find out where you're from. And with that, I'll get started. And I hope you can see my slides. And let's see if that works. Okay, so in March of 2021, the Legal Paraprofessional Program was a pilot project intended to increase access to civil litigation or civil representation to cases where parties wouldn't typically be with representation. And so fortunately, MPA has been involved in the beginning. We had several people that were involved in setting up the pilot project and working with the Minnesota Supreme Court. So MPA has been involved from the beginning. Anna has been one of the LPs from the very beginning. And really the intention of the program, I'm sorry, I already said that, I'm repeating myself. The difference about the Minnesota program is that LPs are required to have attorney representation. And so, and Minnesota also allows several additional practice areas since we went permanent this year in January 2025. So the different practice areas are listed here on the screen. The original practice areas had to do with tenant housing disputes and family law proceedings. So our panelists today have experience in those two practice areas for sure. And now it's growing more to expungements with criminal records, conciliation court, petty misdemeanors, a lot of different areas that you can get involved with depending on your interest and your experience and background. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about the LP application process. As outlined, there's a form on the Minnesota Justice System Judicial Branch website that has all of the steps listed here on the slide. A couple of the main things are, based on your education and your work experience to make sure that you're qualified to represent clients in the different practice areas. There's a specific checklist for the additional or for all the information that you'll need to apply, and including determining who your supervising attorney is, and also, proof of your education and background, and an attorney to attest to where you've worked and your work experience. And all the details are on the website that you can take a look at. And MPA offers a lot of CLEs for its members and non-members. So if you need some CLE credits before you apply, please take a look at the MPA website. We have lots of CLEs coming up in the next couple months. And then in terms of your education and work experience, they're going to ask you information about your background essentially, and and if you've gone to paralegal school or if not. And again,
did you
your
list some shit
attorney.
out or anything? Charlie's kind of tweaking out.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
If everybody could go on mute, that would be great. Thank you. And then, again, based on the practice area you want, there are some additional requirements that will be requested. Um, and then, so prior to your application, you need to have 10 credits of CLEs, including ethics. And then once you are on the roster, you will need to update your CLE training every 2 years. And so there's a question on the application that talks about whether you were already admitted prior to 2025, or if you're just applying now as a new legal paraprofessional. So here's the question: why become an LP? Really, your LP helps expands your capabilities and your role as a paralegal and helping others that can't afford an attorney. Your rates obviously would be much lower, and an opportunity to grow within your career. And it will expand on this question in the panel as well. And then you might be asking what training is needed. There's a lot of different practice areas. As I mentioned, there's 10 different ones. Work experience is relevant for most practice areas. Other areas such as domestic abuse and criminal matters require some additional training before you can actually represent clients. The MPA is working on offering different practice area training. And in July, we'll have our first session on family law. So we're excited about that. Continue to watch our emails and newsletters to get more information about training. And then at the very end of our presentation today, we will ask people what types of trainings they need and what practice areas they're interested in. So if you want a lot of detailed information, check out the Minnesota Judicial Branch website. The website is at mmcourts.gov/LPPP. And it still says it's a pilot project, I think, on the website, but it's not. It's a permanent program as of this year. And all the information, application processes, everything is there. And then if you can't find anything, and if you have, if you want to reach out to me, I'll show you my contact information in a minute. But I can certainly entertain some specific or some general questions right now, and then we're going to provide more information in our panel. And does anybody have any questions so far? Okay.
How many legal paraprofessionals are in Minnesota right now, if you know?
Uh, my committee, if you guys know, I feel like there's around 50, if not a little more or less. The roster is printed on the website.
Thank you.
Sorry, Patty, I don't know offhand how many of us there are.
Okay, no worries at all. I think there's between 40 and 50 the last I counted, but we'll let you know. And okay, so there's a question in the chat about malpractice insurance. So the LPs are supervised by a Minnesota lawyer, by the way. So if you're practicing in Minnesota, you got to be supervised by a Minnesota lawyer. And that they have their own malpractice insurance. Currently, LPs are not required to have their own insurance. You would fall under the lawyer's insurance. And I see somebody put the roster up there. That's perfect. And I'll add the court link in 1 minute. Great. All right. Well, Emily has joined us. Welcome, Emily. All right. So our panelists that I'm going to ask some questions to today will be Rachel Mitchell and Anna Collar and Jeff Neelama and Emily Barrows. So thank you all for joining. And I don't know if Kim is on. Kim, if you are on, you're welcome to join our panel too. I'm going to start out with some questions. Now, I don't actually know if I'm still recording. It is still recording. Okay, good. I don't use Zoom very much, so I wanted to confirm that's still recording so that we can have this later. And again, you can continue to put questions in the chat as they are. So the first person on the screen that I see is Rachel. So Rachel, I'm gonna turn it over to you to introduce yourself and tell them about your LP practice area.
My name is Rachel Mitchell. I work out of Patton, Horston, and Berg in southern Minnesota. We have multiple offices, so I kind of travel around between Janesville, Waseca, Faribault, and Owatonna. And I primarily work in family law. That is what I started with in 2021 when I became a legal paraprofessional. And even though the practice areas expanded, the amount of work in the family law area has kind of kept me there. So
Great. Anna, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Anna Kohler. I work for Justice North, which is civil legal aid. We used to be known as Legal Aid Service of Northeastern Minnesota. I've been an LP, I think, since about a year into the pilot project. I focus primarily on family law and criminal expungements. So I was really glad to see expungements added to our list of areas. I also dabble in a few other things such as housing and consumer, mostly because at Justice North we're practicing in a lot of areas and we have a pretty small staff. So we all sometimes just need to dive into certain areas that we might not normally focus on, but for me, it's mostly family and expungements.
Great, thank you. Jeff?
Hi, yes, good afternoon. My name is Jeff Niemela. I'm in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. My supervising attorney is Miles Ringsred out of Duluth. And he is part of a few his own firm and connected with a few other firms. So that does bring me around the state with Miles. Primarily, my focus is in family law, debtors and creditors, and conciliation court cases. And part of that might come into the answer for question 2, and what made me decide to become an LP, just based on my background. And those are the interest areas that I'm going to stay with and just continue on with.
That sounds great. Emily, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. I'm Emily Burrows. I'm with Justice North, like Anna. I have been an LP, I think, since about the same time Anna started, the first year it started. My main focus is family and housing. But like Anna said, we do a lot of civil legal services, and so we can do consumer conciliation and things like that. But my main focus is housing court and family practice.
Sounds great. Emily, I'll start with you. What made you decide to become an LP?
I think just knowing about the pilot program and being a part of that, some people in our office being a part of that. And then my main focus when I first started was housing court when the evictions started taking off, and kind of getting thrown into that right away just because it was so fast paced and there was so much need for it. And then I went more into family, but
And did you have experience in housing and eviction type cases prior to?
Yes, I think just from working at Justice North, I mean, we did housing court in person before the pandemic, in Crow Wing County. And so housing has always been a big focus for Justice North because it's just the need for it, the stability and the security. And then once eviction started up again and having it be so easily accessible to like remote hearings, the need for staff became greater.
That makes sense. Great. And Anna, how about you? What made you want to be an LP?
Well, I would say that I was already kind of functioning as an LP in a lot of ways. Again, I think for me and Emily, you know, we're working for a nonprofit, and so it's kind of perpetually understaffed, so many requests for help, and our administrators and the attorneys we work with, I think, have always relied heavily on the paralegals. So it was really kind of already doing a lot of the LP kind of work, just with a lot of responsibility. I had, worked hard to earn the trust of the attorneys I worked with, so that to kind of take some of the load off their shoulders so that they could just trust me to draft this or advise a client. But what becoming an LP has done is just to give me more independence. So I don't have to have my legal advice ratified by an attorney, looked at and ratified by them. And then just allowing me to expand and grow myself, which just for me personally is important because I love to learn and I don't want to stagnate. So it's been, just kind of an interesting new challenge, especially the idea of getting into court in front of a judge, which I was actually going to do a couple days ago, but I chickened out.
I think you have to practice and rip the Band-Aid off, right?
Yeah, and
So-
I wish I had actually, because it ended up being just like a 5-minute hearing, and the judge would, I don't know, I totally could have done it. I need to get over that hump of confidence. But anyway, it's interesting. I just have more independence, and just has really kept me, I think, interested in my job.
Great. So Rachel, I want you to tell me about why you became an LP, and then there's a question in the chat that maybe you can help answer that says, are current LPs employed under a supervision attorney, or is there a typical relationship? If you want to explain how it works at your law firm.
Well, I decided to become a legal paraprofessional after I learned about the program, and then I was working with an attorney that was doing a lot of family law. We were short on attorneys to do litigation, and it seems that in this area there wasn't very many attorneys that were practicing family law. So I had already established this relationship with the attorney I was working for. I kind of still do paralegal work for him on his other cases and do my cases that I work with him on. So we kind of juggle the cases together. And then if things overlap, like hearings or something like that, then we kind of cover for each other.
So you're able to attend the hearings on behalf of the client without the lawyer, correct?
Correct. Yes. Which is very, very nerve-wracking to start with. And some judges are more receptive than others. So, and then let's see. I think that answers why I became a legal paraprofessional.
Correct. And then the supervising attorney, you had already worked with him when you, and then he became your supervising attorney officially for the roster, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Now, Jeff, you mentioned that you work with a lawyer in Duluth, right? But do you have your own company, the mediation company?
That's right. Yeah. So how did I get here? Let's see. So my interest, I was became a paralegal in 2006. And just, like Anna said, just sort of kept going and kept expanding. Led me to, pursuing a law degree, but there's no route back to Minnesota for practice, right? So finding a way to utilize that and bring it all back home just wasn't going to work. I wasn't, I was already in my 40s, when I started that, and I wasn't going to uproot myself and, bring myself down to law school to pursue that, partly because I already own a debt collection agency and a mediation firm. So I have plenty of experience in court on all of our debtor and creditor cases, pursuing all the way through enforcement in some cases. So, for me to present and to be in front of the court, I've had quite an amount of experience already through the years. So that step was sort of natural for me. And in family law, as a mediator, interfacing with families in conflict and that entire dynamic, bringing people through a pro se divorce process or a parenting time dispute, the difference between neutral and representation, really is in where that line is. So to shift out of the gear and to shift from neutral to advocate in that context, for me is pretty natural, or seemed pretty natural, as long as we can define where the line is and knowing one's position there. So that brought me into seeing the LP program, sort of seeing it coming for years, I would say, lining myself up to where I wanted to fit into that and make that work. So establishing that relationship with a supervising attorney for me was easy. It's an attorney that I've done quite a bit of work for in the past. He thought this would be a great thing, and let's do it. And now that's led to relationships with other attorneys as well, that attorney works with.
That's great. Emily, can you maybe help describe some of the duties that you do as an LP for the work that you do with the housing?
Sure. So one of the main things I do for housing court is I go to housing court. I have represented clients at housing court. Right now, usually I'm with another attorney. So just help with the cases, get the general information, but can discuss with the clients their options, negotiate settlements typically. I have never been to a trial, but they mostly settle at.
Okay, but
first
do
hearing.
you appear in court?
I have appeared in court, yes.
Okay. All right. And then Anna, you mentioned that you haven't appeared in court yet, but and it to me, and again, I'm not an LP. I'll just be completely honest about that. Before you were an LP, does some of the work that you did as a paralegal similar to what you do with an LP, or are you doing more work as an LP?
Well, I would definitely say I'm doing more work as an LP, similar to what I was doing, just like I said before, more independently. And I just have more options. So, for example, I can go to court. I just haven't gotten there yet. And like Emily said, so many cases settle. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously in family law, there's a strong encouragement from the court to settle and not have a trial. So,
So
yeah,
when
but
you go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was
No,
going to
I
say
was
when
just
you
go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you settle a matter, are you involved in drafting the settlement agreement, or is it the lawyer, or how does that work?
I draft almost everything. So I draft petitions at the beginning of a case, the summons in the petition and all the ancillary initial pleadings. If there's discovery, if we're going to do discovery, I draft that. Motions and affidavits, I draft all of that. I draft proposals, I draft stipulations, I draft proposed orders. If we do have a trial, I draft the proposed findings, and so on and so forth. And I really, really love to write. And so I'm super happy doing that. And the attorneys that I work with know that, and they're perfectly happy to turn that over to me. So,
That's
so
great.
yeah, again, I would say I can just do a lot of that independently. I became a paralegal 17 or 18 years ago. So I just have a good sense of what to include. The other thing is that I think the LP has given me kind of increased, I don't know if credibility is the right word with the attorneys, but they're very welcome and open and actually encouraging of me to help strategize. So what's the best way to approach this case? And I find more and more that they listen to me, that, they take my ideas and my suggestions seriously. So yeah, It's
That's great.
professionally, I think it's just been really good.
That's great. It sounds like you're acting or that you're practicing like a lawyer, which is the intention of, the program. You're not obviously not a lawyer, but you're supervised by a lawyer, but you're doing lawyer type work. And which I think is interesting and a good challenge for our profession. Rachel, can you kind of describe what you do for family law?
Yeah, I do a lot of the paperwork that Anna was talking about, and I have actually been to 3 trials. I don't do the trial though. I'm kind of like a second chair, I guess, because I've worked up the case and I know even the little details. And so I can, while the attorney's asking questions, or um, depends on how they answer, I can like write down a fact that, well, this is not entirely true. Ask them this, or yeah, at any point. And it's actually, we found it's cheaper for me to represent a client from the beginning and then have both an attorney and I at the trial if it were to go to trial generally. So yeah, clients have been really really accepting of that, and a lot of the cases do settle at mediation. I do mediations as well.
That's great. So when you're at a mediation, are you there with a lawyer or go by yourself? And is it like any other mediation where you show up with, here's your parameters on maybe a settlement amount or?
No, well, for family law, a lot of the mediation is custody issues.
Custody issues? Okay.
So, I mean, there's sometimes for divorces and stuff, there's money, but primarily I have found that mediations come into play when there's kids.
Makes sense. So one of the things that you guys just mentioned was about pleadings, and just currently as an update, I'm also a member of the standing committee for the state of Minnesota that reviews the Legal Paraprofessional Program, and we're looking at whether legal paraprofessionals can sign pleadings in the future. So that will be something to watch coming out of our report that's due in July. There's a few questions that are coming in, and this is maybe a confusion part, but my understanding is that LPs need to be supervised by a Minnesota lawyer. And then I'm wondering, and it sounds like Rachel and Anna and Emily all have supervisors within their employer. And Jeff, you have a supervisor in Duluth. I'm just wondering if other people, I don't think you need to work for a company or a firm that has for your supervising lawyer. It can just be any supervising lawyer with the right experience, obviously, and then they're Minnesota licensed. Do you guys know an answer to that?
Right. So that's a good spot for some clarification. I see in the chat there some people are kind of wondering about that. So if you look at the documents you posted there with the requirements, you can see a few different routes. And one of those, and so for the Minnesota Paralegal Association, I'm the Greater Minnesota chairperson. So my brain and my thoughts are without state Minnesota, right away from the metro area or larger areas, and how an application would work, in an area with a lesser dense population and lesser opportunities. And so there is a employee or contract option. There is a insurance under the attorney's insurance or separately insured. Those are both routes. So myself, I carry my own policy of insurance, and I'm listed as a non-employee contractor with my own insurance. And so to do that for me, where I'm at, as long as there's not a conflict, to stack up several supervising attorneys to keep my work pool full is definitely an option. That's an option for others as well. I don't see anybody else really utilizing the program yet that way. We do, the folks that I work with, have a firm in development, owned by the attorneys, that will break that out and give some more formation to it. So we'll just sort of see how that evolves. In disclosure, I sit on the board of a insurance company that focuses on judges and lawyers' liability, and liability for mediators. And in conversations on how the industry would approach this in the future, there's been a little bit of discussion on select policies for LPs or the equivalent in other states. So as that evolves, then you can see that in policy of insurance sort of traveling with that person if they're not strictly with that firm and under that policy.
Great, thanks. Let us know if that answered your question. A few other questions that I wrote down. The Minnesota CP certification is completely different from an LP licensure program that's administered by the state of Minnesota. The Minnesota certification program is through the Minnesota Paralegal Association. There's some similar requirements. Obviously, you need to have education and your background and your CLE credits. Originally, when the pilot program launched, you had to also be a Minnesota certified paralegal as well. So there's could be a little bit of confusion with that there, but they are totally two separate programs. The application program process is completely separate. You have to follow the application process online to be an LP. You'll need to have your attorney attestation done again if you've done it before. You can certainly write on your form that you are a Minnesota certificate or Minnesota certified paralegal, but again, that program is run by MPA, not the state of Minnesota, and the LP program is run by the state of Minnesota. For those of you that are currently LPs, you do not need to report right now. The standing committee is working on the process. I think you'll have to report in 2027. So just keep that in mind when you're taking your CLE credits, and I will keep you informed if that changes. But that's my current understanding. That is going to, and then how you report that and track it will also be determined next year in 2026. Panel, let me know if you see any other questions that maybe I missed.
I'd like to answer Jenny's question about LPs primarily handling cases. What we've done is, like I said, me and the attorney kind of interchange. If I'm going to court, then I submit a certificate of representation and he submits a certificate of representation. And then it's like on the court website, we're listed as like co-counsel type thing. So yes, we do appear at mediations interchangeably for his cases that he's primarily on or my cases that I'm primarily on. Because of the Legal Paraprofessional Program, we are able to do that. So hopefully that answered that question.
Great. And I noticed Tina had a question about paralegal certification. Originally with the pilot program, the Minnesota Paralegal Certification was required to be an LP. It's no longer required, but I do think the certification program certainly helps because it broadens your perspective on the different areas of law, especially the RP the PACE program. Panelists, do you have any other comments about certification credentials? Okay. All right. A few other questions I had is maybe Jeff, you can maybe describe who your clients are.
Okay, so typically, my clients are individuals looking to settle a parenting time dispute or a dissolution or some other matter that don't necessarily want to, pay a huge retainer
Want to
fee.
bring up all that stuff you didn't sell of mine? Just as you come up throughout the day or whatever.
Me or okay, somebody's on needs to mute perhaps. So anyways, folks that don't want to pay a large retainer fee, when I work with individuals in the relationships that we establish, I'm able to do that on a flat fee basis as a general practice. So it just depends on the work that we put out ahead of time to see what representation might look like, and then to move it forward. Doing dissolutions as a collaborative law matter, that's probably the near future under a collaborative law agreement, where as an LP, I can take care of everything, including the stipulated dissolution itself. And if the parties decide to litigate at that point, then they need to go find other representation. And under the rules through the LP program, an LP is allowed to do that stipulated divorce process. So that's one way to safeguard being able to offer at a flat fee without the case sort of blowing up and taking up resources and whatnot. And it's a good method. It's it's approved throughout the state. It works. So, and then the other folks that we see are folks that just don't understand sort of conciliation court. They don't, they're intimidated by the process. They don't know what to do. And typically having that person go to their own hearing and do their own conciliation court work versus showing up, and representing for them, is the sort of the preferred route right now, but giving them the tools and the training and some advice on how to do that. And so that can be sort of done in a way that's, both financially responsible, ethical, solves the problem, and still allows for them to appeal if they get, wind up with a result that they don't like, and they can always come back on appeal.
Great. So Emily, maybe this is a question for you. As far as I understand, LPs can only represent tenants at this point. I know it's another area that we're looking at, whether landlords can be represented. But Emily, can you tell us about your clients?
Yep. So Justice North, we do civil laws, Anna said, and we represent low income clients. So when we get a housing court, we typically, yes, only represent the tenants in the action. And then same with like family law. I mean, we're a civil legal service for low income clientele. And so that's typically what our client base is.
Okay. Rachel, how about you? Who are your clients?
Family law is what I primarily do. So either one of the parties usually, they come in and they're generally set up with an initial consultation with me. And then if it's something that is determined that I am not comfortable with heading up, then I kind of transfer it over to my supervising attorney. But I get all the information and I'm still the primary contact for that person. So, I mean, it all depends really on the
Sure.
issues that they're
So you
on.
do the initial intake, and
Mhm.
you're representing one of the individuals
Mhm.
in the matter. And then there's a question about fees. Do you guys have, and maybe for Jeff too, what type of fees and how is that determined?
Mine was determined by the firm, and it is
Ah.
approximately half of what the attorney's fee is per hour. So usually for a retainer, it's half of what the attorney would generally ask for a retainer. And can I answer Corinne's
Absolutely.
question? She's asking if for criminal expungements, is the supervising attorney solely the attorney of record? When you look at MCRO, sometimes it'll show me and my supervising attorney as the attorneys. Sometimes it'll just show him, but my certificate of representation is still in the court file, so the judge does know that I'm also or in place of representing the client. Hopefully that answers that.
Great. Jeff, do you have standard rates, or how does your rates work?
Yeah, I think, rates are going to be dependent usually on the subject, and the entire context, but generally leaning towards finding a resolution that works in a flat rate context, so that the client isn't surprised later on, right? So more knowledge up front. Usually for me and for us equals, a more successful outcome in a client relationship at the end. So that's how we tend to limit that fee. As far as, what am I making or getting, paid? I don't know if that's what the question is in the chat. What does an LP make versus an attorney? Does that seem to be the question? Yeah, generally somewhere, in that half to 3/4 range.
Yeah, I think the way I read the question is, what are the rates you can charge? So I think that makes sense. So this is a question I don't know if we can answer or not, but somebody asked a question about working at a county office, especially child support matters and paternity matters. I think so if you are an employee of the county, I think this way I understand this question, you just would need a supervising attorney to be your supervising attorney for you to apply to become an LP. So again, the LP process is you have to fill out the application process, and then it gets reviewed by the standing committee for the LP program. So it's not an I don't know if they've turned anybody down. I'm going to be completely honest, but it's a lengthy process and you got to go through it. And then if you're approved, and again, you have to have the supervising attorney up front. So it'd be so if you work for the county, you're going to have a conversation with one of your lawyers who could be your supervising attorney with that knowledge. And then, so that kind of segues into the application process. And I'll just throw this out there for anybody in the panel. Do you think the application process was difficult or straightforward? If you can share.
I thought it was pretty easy. It laid out everything that I needed, and I submitted everything, and I got good response times, and yeah, it was pretty easy for me, I guess.
That's
Yes.
great.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I think you need to, if you qualify under more than one route, you need to pick your route. And I think for purposes of clarity back to the, to the governing body, it's important that you just pick one route, because they make that sort of apparent that that's what they want to see in the application process. So I qualified, I think, 3 different ways, right? Or at least 2. And so we just picked one route and just went with that. And then the thought process being, if there was any question, we could just, raise everything else in the other route as well, and just sort of keep going to show qualification. But
Right,
also
and
having that relationship with that attorney well up front, have them well read in on what the qualifications are, what their responsibilities are, make sure that they're comfortable knowing what they're taking on. That's very important as well.
Yep, that makes sense. So I want to go back to the supervisor question. If your supervisor is not a lawyer, they can't obviously be your attorney representing or supervising you, right? So you need to have a Minnesota attorney who's in the practice area that you want to be an LP, that's your supervisor. That's the requirement. You don't necessarily have to work for them. You don't necessarily have to be in the same law firm or county, whatever your situation is. It could be pro bono work as well. Like, so I work for 3M Company. We do some pro bono work, and I'm hoping to become an LP if I can get, the right lawyer connection based on my skill set, what practice area I could do. And again, with the application process, if you can fall into more than one bucket, you just would submit your application form and say, hey, I have an attorney that's handling family law cases. I have an attorney for tenant housing cases. They could be different supervising attorneys, again, based on their practice area. There's a question about the LP standing committee. So Rachel Elberson, who is an LP and also a Minnesota certified paralegal and part of MPA, is leading that committee. And I am a paralegal on the committee. Shelley, I think who's on here, is another paralegal on the committee who's working as an LP or in the process of becoming an LP. So yeah, there are voices of LPs on that committee. And part of what I try to do is gather information about from LPs. So I talked to this group about some questions we had. If you have comments about LP or whatever, I can be your voice on the committee. So, you know, reach out to me if you have questions. But we are definitely interacting with practicing LPs. There's also lawyers on that committee. There's judges on that committee. And a few just lay people that are not in the legal world to help us understand, you know, perspective from non-legal people for that committee as well. I don't know if I got all the questions or not, but we'll keep plugging through. I know we're running out a little. Well, we got 15 minutes. Okay. One of the questions that I sort of had pre-planned is, what are some challenges about being an LP? Maybe Rachel, I'll start with you.
My biggest one is going to court, the confidence aspect, and actually something that I've had conversations with my supervising attorney about is that they seem to hold me to almost a higher standard, like because they don't, maybe it's that they don't feel that I have the education or the qualifications necessarily. I don't know why it is, but it seems that they test you more, essentially, is kind of what I have found. So that's a huge challenge for me, especially trying to gain the confidence for speaking in court in general. So
Anna?
I would completely agree with Rachel on that, having admitted that I chickened out just a couple days ago on going to court. So yeah, I think that's just kind of intimidating. One other thing I would mention is that I think I just feel this sort of sensitivity with not so much the attorneys I work with, because they're already used to relying heavily on whether it's paralegals or LPs, as I mentioned before, but kind of the private bar. I'm just trying to, I always kind of feel like I'm walking a line of respecting the fact that they paid their dues, so to speak, by going to law school and kind of suffering through that, you know, what I understand to be kind of misery. So I just find that sometimes I feel like I'm kind of walking a fine line between not trying to pretend, not trying to give the impression that I think I'm an attorney, but that I can do these attorney things, and just trying to, basically I'm talking about relationships and trying to keep relationships positive with the attorneys I work with, but also with the surrounding private bar that's on the other side of our cases. I work in Grand Rapids, which is a relatively small town, not tiny, but you know, there's a lot of interaction with each other in work and outside of work. So not being very articulate, but just trying to kind of manage those relationships and being respectful for the attorneys having gone to the trouble of getting a law degree.
That makes sense. Jeff, how about you?
Gotta watch what I say here. I'd be a little bit more direct. I'd probably just tag on what Anna just said. I've got a collection of email screenshots, things that eventual clients end up giving from other, you know, you could say area counsel that say he's not qualified. Why would you do that? Whatever. Yeah, there is that little bit of, I don't know, competition. I always like to say we went from taking some scraps off a plate to like being able to like scrape whole entrees off. And that really gets them mad, you know, and I don't have any kids to put through college at the moment. You know, they're still young. I don't need a new boat, right? I'm not gonna, you know, be exorbitant. I'm not gonna go out of my way. But for other area council to say not qualified, you know, not good enough, doesn't, you know, not the same. You know, when you're doing a collaborative, you know, agreement, you know, in a stipulation, it's pretty easy to get people, you know, to agree, right? We're not out there hacking and whacking in litigation, right? That amount of skill to take and push your client's matter across the line, right? And I think that's where that's at. We're not able to do that anyways, right? So we're serving a different function. And I think some of that animus comes across in the fact that they're running a business and it kind of is dollar driven. So if you can just get yourself over that and realize it's not about who's smarter, who's better, it's that, you know, they're a different brand than you and they're keeping their brand in business, then you'll know where a lot of that's coming from, and you just let it go. You know, wave and say hi, have a nice day, and just keep your chin up and do your job.
Sure. And again, you know, the focus of the LP program is to have more people have representation. So I hope if the lawyers can sort of understand that. Emily, how about you? Any challenges in your role?
I think they pretty much all covered it. I think
Okay.
I don't really have much to add. I mean, I live in a small town, like Anna said too. So at housing court, I think they got used to me being there.
Sure.
And the referees that we've had have never really treated me any differently. I know that was a question there.
That's
Any
great.
family cases I've taken on for full representation, I usually settled with an attorney on the other side. But it was a pretty straightforward matter, I think.
Okay. What tips can you provide for potential LPs? What advice could you give them?
Be confident. Work really closely with your attorney. I think they're going to be your biggest support. You know, we have such good attorneys that we work for, and they're, you know, when it is nerve-wracking and you don't want to go to court, they're going to do it for you, because we're a team. I mean, just really be a team, because you got to have that communication, because if something is going wrong, I mean, or, you know, you're missing something, to just talk to your attorney. I mean, it's obviously their license too as well. So you have to respect that, but just work as a team. I
That
think
sounds
that's been the
great.
most help for me. So
Rachel, how about you? Oh, go ahead, Anna.
I was
Nope, go
just
ahead.
gonna say, be very, very honest with your attorney, your direct supervisor, and any other attorneys you might work with. You know, Emily and I work with a bunch of attorneys. We have one supervisor, one official supervisor, but I'm just always extremely honest with them. If I don't know the answer to this, I don't know how to advise the client on this, I don't know how to do this. So that I don't end up, I mean, it's okay to make mistakes, obviously, but I'm always just careful to be honest so that I don't make a mistake that is so bad that we end up in some kind of ethical trouble. Just be really honest about what you know and what you don't.
BELAR.
That makes sense. Rachel, how about you?
Tell me what the question was again.
This is about challenges or no, sorry, I switched topics. What tips would you provide for potential LPs?
Okay. I completely agree with Emily and Anna about the relationship with your supervising attorney. That is almost one of the most important things. You have to be able to approach them with anything. I mean, it might be something that you think you should know, but if you don't, you don't. And your supervising attorney is there to help. So always you need to be comfortable with who's supervising you. Tips would probably be to just be cognizant of the rules of civil procedure, proofreading, making sure you don't take on too many cases. Yeah. I think
Jeff,
that's-
anything you want to add?
No, I'd agree with what's already been said, but and I would also say know your practice area, but know the LP limits to that box. You know, don't make the mistake of an ethical misstep, stepping outside of what it is that you're allowed to do or can do as an LP. And always work with your supervising attorney to make sure that's what you're doing, and let them handle anything that might be a new matter or over that line, and just sort of keep things neat and tidy, and you keep yourself out of an ethical problem.
That makes sense. So there's a couple more questions, and I know we're running out of time. Minnesota Paralegal Association does have an LP committee, and the panelists today are part of that committee. And we meet monthly just to kind of discuss whatever issues are coming up and about training. So if there is an area of training that you think you would be interested in, please add that to the chat. We have family law scheduled for July, and then we're looking at expungement process, where it can sort of teach you about how expungements work. And then ADR, there was a wonderful session on ADR at the convention. If you missed it, hopefully it was recorded and you can watch it, but we're going to have part 2 of that session coming up, probably August or September based on the speaker's schedule. And again, MPA is here to offer the right education and training. And if you want a support group separate from the committee, we can certainly set that up too. Just send me an email with your ideas. Would love that. Then there's another question about marketing yourself as an LP. So the roster is available on the website, and we are updating the roster so it's clear like where you work and what practice area. But we're also working as the standing committee to figure out how to market LPs, and MPA is willing to support that as well. So again, if you have ideas for us, reach out, but that is part of the standing committee, is trying to figure out how to get, our goal is to get more LPs within Minnesota and get more interest. So open to any suggestions people have. I think I've handled most of the questions. If I missed something, please reach out to me. You're welcome to join our committee, and again, we can set up an informal support group. I do think it's helpful if LPs are talking together and you learn from each other. That's true about paralegals in general. So be happy to connect LPs with other LPs. And I'll just put in a pitch: if you're not a member of the Minnesota Paralegal Association, please join us, because all your CLEs will be free. And we have a lot of different areas and interests. And we also need board and committee members. So I see Teresa's on. So a little pitch for the Minnesota Paralegal Association as well. Again, I really thank people for joining us. Feel free to reach out to me, and I will put my email address in the chat here. And you can find me on the MPA webpage, because I'm one of the board of director members too, and so is Jeff, and Teresa is our president. So again, thank you for reaching out, and I hope everyone has a great day. And I hope you found this informative. We wanted to sort of make you aware of the program and get interest. So if you are interested in becoming an LP, please reach out to me as well, and I'll put you on a list, and we'll try to figure out the application process together or whatever. It's a goal that I have to be an LP as well. So thank you again for joining us. Thank the panelists, Rachel and Anna and Jeff and Emily. Really appreciate your support and time today. And I hope everyone has a great day.